Morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I'm Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone, my trusty sidekick, co-anchor, is here. This is episode 175 of Tottenham Walks, and we're about to be on the canals of Newhall this afternoon. Guys, do me a favour, please smash the like button for me for the video. Smash the subscribe button if you haven't already for the channel. There's 5,890 of you that have done so thus far, which means we're only 110 away from 6k, which is mind-boggling to think that so many people want to join me on a dog walk on the daily, or as often as possible. It's very cool. Appreciate all the support. And please, guys, also drop the notification bell button, a little squeeze, and also a comment on the video. Let me know your thoughts on today's one. Of course, we've got to talk about the managerial merry-go-round, haven't we? So we all thought yesterday was the day there was going to be news. Nothing came. This morning we wake up to the noise that Paratici may also be on his way out, joining Conte and his team of merry men on the queue for the exit door. I guess they're trying to figure out right now, first and foremost, whether what Conte said was something that was sackable, i.e. gross misconduct, whether criticising the board or something like that is in his contract, and by him clarifying that, you know, it wasn't, he was going at the players. Maybe that is the wiggle room that gets him his additional year's payout. That is the rumour, that if Tottenham sacked him during his 18 months, he would get a full year's salary as compensation. In any event, we don't know yet. I'd imagine there'd be some compromise and he'll walk away with a nice little payout, having done 18 months work of playing the same system every single week, picking the same team, absent an injury or forced his hand pretty much every single week, and never changing. Good gig if you can get it. I can't wait for him to go, but at the same time, I acknowledge that it's going to be a very frustrating and disjointed period between now and the end of the season. And personally, guys, look, a lot of people have been claiming and calling for, myself included, like a giant reset at Tottenham Hotspur. You nuke the whole thing. Everybody's got to go, including the owner, the director of football, the coaches, several of the players, and everybody. And whilst I think it's unlikely to get the guy out from the very top, Daniel Levy, Joe Lewis, and Enoch, I think that you could take this opportunity to do something like a reset and ask Paratici to be on his way too. At the end of the day, he was responsible for bringing Conte in and paying the man the money that he's been paid. And look, I don't know, some people think he's done a really good job, some people think he's done a really bad job. I'm not sure. I think it's too early to tell on how well he's done. But for me personally, I think the overriding reason why he has to leave is because he has the sword of Damocles hanging over his neck, not knowing whether he'll be able to do his job anywhere in, the world of football for the next 2 or 3 years is a massive problem. And that, the axe could come down on that with a judicial ruling any day. And so, his lingering, precarious situation is going to be a stumbling block for, credible managers who are interested in the job. They may want to know, who am I working for? Who am I going to be dealing with? Who's going to be taking care of the transfers? And if the answer is, well, for now it's Paratici, but in a world where that changes, it will be Daniel Levy, and then until we find another director of football, then it will be that person. I think that's just a really weird environment for someone to get on board with. So to me, it makes sense to cut them all out. And look, I've said it before, I'd love the owners to move on as well, as long as we can find a new owner that's going to come in and take us forward in a responsible and sustainable way, but that also has the correct risk reward balance and the appetite for taking chance. I'm all for it. And on this particular one, guys, I'm going to call it out now. I think that Daniel Levy takes a giant capital L on this whole last 18 months. Not because I don't think he has backed the manager. I think he spent 200 million quid nearly on Antonio Conte. Not because I think that Daniel Levy is responsible for everything that goes wrong with the club, like a lot of people do. But just on this specific instance, I think he's responsible because he allowed this inevitable outcome to happen. It was always clear and plain as day to me that Antonio Conte and Tottenham Hotspur were never going to mix, like oil and water. The ways that they go about their business, the things that they prioritise, the demands, the style of personality, it was always going to be, butting heads, and one person, one system wants ready now players, and if that means getting 32-year-olds in, then so be it. The other wants to build younger players, needs someone who can nurture talent, needs someone who wants to be there for a long time, not a good time or a short good time. And so the two were just never going to mix, and Daniel Levy must have known that, and if he didn't, then he's incompetent. If he did, then he was doing it to placate frustrated fans and kick the can down the road. And what annoys me even more is that he didn't learn from the example that when he tried it. It was fine to try it once, go and get a big brand manager, even if they play rubbish football, even if the Tottenham fans are never going to be on board with sloppy, horrible football, defensive football, not sloppy football, defensive football. But as long as it's a big name, Tottenham fans will think we're moving in the right direction. And they tried that with Jose, and it didn't work. Didn't work. So, to then go through the embarrassment of Nuno and that whole period, and then pivot again to try the same thing with Conte as you did with Mourinho, but just an amplified version on steroids of the same idea. It didn't work the first time. It definitely wasn't going to work this time. And so for me, on that particular note, Daniel Levy's responsible and takes a giant L. As I say, I don't blame him for the style of football. I don't blame him for the lack of tactical nuance, for the rigidity, for the stubbornness, for the lack of curiosity to play new players, the overly loyal or over faith you have in players that are playing terribly, to getting kicked out of the cup competitions, for the ridiculous press conferences that flip-flop, and volatility of a child, a petulant child. All of those things I blame Antonio Conte for. But for allowing this situation to happen, you have to put it at Daniel Levy's feet. Does a new chairman come in who's got money bags, money bags FC, Sugar Daddy FC, whatever? Does any of the things that are the problems with Tottenham change just because you change the owner? Does the inability to develop youth change? Not necessarily. Does the ability to identify new talent change? Not necessarily. The only thing that really changes is going to be the risk profile, and you don't know whether that's going to be tighter or looser. And probably the frequency or the willingness to negotiate in a different way over players will change. Again, unknown whether you move in the right or wrong direction with that. But I'm still up for it as long as we can find the right person. That's a conversation for another day, because the only way that we're going to have the giant reset that we want right now is if Daniel Levy does receive a bid from an opportunistic, failed bidder of the Manchester United system, and then Daniel Levy just thinks, I'm a little bit getting bored of the hate and the frustrations, and also recognising that the challenge in front is not getting easier, that the hill is getting steeper because of how quickly the teams that have always been stronger than us generally in recent years can transition from having a good season to a bad season to back into the next version of themselves. And also, of course, the impending new teams that are starting to rise up, like Newcastle. And so maybe, just maybe, Daniel Levy will think, if the right bid comes in now, let's get out, let's go. I think it's incredibly unlikely. And so really what we're talking about is at best a new manager, at worst a new manager, and at best a new manager and a director of football. But if you're going to go for the new director of football, if Paratici is on his way out as well, then I don't want that decision to be rushed on who the next guy is. Who is the next guy? Well, look, no idea, to be honest. I know we were looking at the team at Benfica, but apparently they've all been indicted for tax fraud and accounting irregularities in the last couple of months as well. So, another example of where there's money, there's corruption, and in football there's a lot of money, and obviously a lot of opportunity to be disingenuous with it. So I don't know where the next director of football would come from, but whoever it is, I want them to make the right decision, and for that person to come in, identify everything that he wants to do, articulate a very clear plan, and hope that it's in line with what all of Tottenham fans want. And I think I speak for nearly everybody when I say we all want a clearly defined project that has outcomes that including lifting trophies, hopefully going for the Premier League title in a specific number of years, that includes the development of youth, that includes the better ID talent acquisition, and that promotes a constant philosophy of front foot, attractive football from top to bottom throughout the club. And if we can have that articulated by someone, and then everything that gets designed for the club's footballing side has that in mind, has that agenda in mind, then I think most Tottenham fans would tolerate the initial hiccups and the hurdles that we would face in the process of delivering that, especially if you're watching attractive football. Even if it's not successful football all of the time at the moment, attractive football, for me at least, is the cornerstone and bedrock of everything that we should be building. That's why I hated Conte, that's why I hated Mourinho, certainly why I had no time at all for Nuno. Anyway, who the next manager is? I don't think I've even asked you guys who it is that you'd like. Obviously you've got the people's favourite in Pochettino. Then you've got people that want young project guys that might look at someone like Ruben Amorim. There's benefits to having someone like him in that a lot of the players that we bought for the Conte rebuild will slot straight into his. But I think the negatives of signing someone like him are like any established names in the team may just jump ship and don't want to hang around for the experience. I'd imagine that, to be fair on that point, I'd imagine that Harry Kane is 100% dead set on leaving after this debacle, getting dumped out of all the cups in a month, and going through this now crisis. Then it's clear to me that Harry Kane will do all he can to get out in the summer. So it could be Amorim. There's rumours that Thomas Tuchel is obviously up there with one of the top picks. Listen, if he comes in, I think that won't go down well at all. I certainly will be I'll go apoplectic about it. Chelsea fans hated his football throughout, basically. And I can't stand another manager that plays that sort of way. So I'm begging Levy not to get him. And then obviously you've got the outlayers like Gallardo at River Plate, which I find that a little bit too out there. I'd like him, it sounds interesting, but I just don't think it's the least likely. When you've got De Zerbi or Thomas Frank, who are Premier League experienced, don't mind them either, but I'm not sure how well they'll go down. Certainly not Thomas Frank. I would have thought Thomas Frank wouldn't go down particularly well with the fans. So we'll see. The likelihood is, though, guys, is that if we are going to get rid of Conte in the next couple of days, and Paratici's gone too, then you would want the director of football, whoever that's going to be, to have an impact and an influence over the decision making of who the manager is. And therefore, it's chicken and the egg. You can't really sign the manager until you sign the director of football, and I want that to be a time taken exercise, patient, that could take a couple of weeks, 3 weeks to identify, to have interviews, to sort all that stuff out. And consequently, that probably promotes the idea then of keeping Ryan Mason in charge for the last 10 games of the season, which to me, I don't want to throw any disrespect on his name, because I know he had a relatively successful short spell with us a couple of years ago, but I just don't think that we'll finish top 4 with Ryan Mason in charge. And the difference between finishing 4th and 5th is not just Champions League football, it's the money, right? Because I know people roll their eyes now and say they're fed up of finishing top 4 because we don't do anything in the Champions League anyway. And that's a good point, but really the benefit is money. And if you do want to give whoever the next guy is the tools to do his business in the summer, then top 4 is important. So it's a trade-off. It's a big trade-off, and I'm not sure if I have the confidence in Ryan Mason to get us there. Let me know if you do. Let me know your thoughts generally, guys. I'm going to go now. Like, share and subscribe, and as always, bye-bye.